Hello everybody and welcome to the second practice session for the British Touring Cars. Due off in a minute, let's cross right over trackside for all of the action as well. It's going to be absolutely brilliant to hear them all again. And they're now down on the circuit as well. Let's go down and listen to the pit lane reporters.
Finishes in the Honda, and then back in the Honda last year, 12th in the championship, best of third at Croft. Not probably everything he'd hoped for after a really good 2021, but he's, as I say, switched to the Ford. Seems to be at home in that car and in that team, and he's in illustrious company with his three-time champion teammate Ash Sutton and three-time Porsche Super Cup champion, twice a driver that's finished third in this championship, Dan Camish amongst his teammates as well. The Ford Focus ST's powered by the Ford Mantune engines, and going pretty well in that first free practice session this morning. You also heard from Jade Edwards, who's in that new build, or one of the new build Cupras, and difficult weekend. The car just not behaving to start with, teething problems. So Jade saying to Al, this is the start of the season for us now, really, this first weekend, and nice to see her going well in that first free practice session this morning from a racing dynasty, really. Her dad, Jim Edwards, was a Clio Cup champion 23 years ago now, in 2000. He also, if you remember, the brilliant Renault 5 championship, he was a champion in that back in the early 1990s as well. And her granddad, Jim Senior, won the Renault 5 title back in the late 1970s and raced in Formula 3 alongside James Hunt and Emerson Fittipaldi, both went on to become the Formula 1 world champions, of course. And Jade carrying that on there. Very popular figure on the grid. Made her debut in the BTCC in 2020 after a few seasons racing at the sharp end of the Renault UK Clio Cup. And Jade was fifth in the Jack Sears Trophy last year, which is named after the first ever British Saloon Car champion. He won the title here at Brands Hatch on a shootout. And this last few years, the Jack Sears Trophy has been awarded to any driver that had not been on the podium prior to the start of the season. So if you get into the start of this year, you haven't been on the podium before, you can fight for the Jack Sears Trophy title. And that's also going to be very competitive this year, I would say, looking at the drivers that we've got in it. So the car's now heading out onto the circuit. Jack Sears Trophy winner of 2022, Bobby Thompson, going well this morning in the top six. And just to remind you of the current standings in the overall championship after that first three races at Donington Park a fortnight ago. Dan Camish, 48 points. Tom Ingram, 40 in second. Jake Hill, who was quickest this morning, third on 32 points. Tom Chilton, fourth in the championship on 30. And Adam Morgan, 26 points, fifth in the championship. Bobby Thompson leading the independents driver standings on 45 points, two ahead of Josh Cook on 43. Andrew Watson, third in the independents driver standings after a debut weekend in the British Touring Car Championship at Donington Park, third on 40 points. We also need to keep an eye in qualifying on the Goodyear Wingfoot Award as well, which has been won by Colin Turkington twice since it came into effect 3 years ago, and that's the qualifying award. So points are awarded on the same scale as in racing: 20 points if you qualify on pole position, 17 if you're second, and so on. And of course, we've only had one qualifying session, so Dan Rowbottom leads the Goodyear Wingfoot Award, pointing to the fact that he got pole position at Donington 2 weeks ago. Jack Sears Trophy being led by Andrew Watson after the first weekend at Donington. He's got 50 points. Dexter Patterson, 45, is second. And Nick Hamilton, third in the Jack Sears Trophy after his superb Race 2 performance to get sixth place in that race. Nick, third in the Jack Sears Trophy standings, just 1 point ahead of Sam Osborne, who got his maiden BTCC podium 2 weeks ago at Donington Park. And when we get to qualifying later on, just to go through the changes that we've got to the hybrid engine management system, the HEM scale this year. So last year it was the top 10 drivers at the start of the weekend, i.e. qualifying one and race one, the top 10 from the championship that had restricted use on a scaling back system of the hybrid power that you get with the extra deploy of power that you can use in qualifying and the races. But this year it has changed back to not be the top 10, but the top 7. So it's if you are in the championship lead like Dan Camish, you get less use of it in qualifying, and you get less use of it in the race than everybody else at the start of the weekend.
Dan Lloyd's not out. The car in the garage, he's got his helmet on, but the team are still working on the car, and Dan's gone to the back of his car. Let me see. Morning, Dan. What's up?
No, we're just sandbagging. We don't want to show
Are you, by Joe?
racing lines and stuff. So we made quite a big setup change for this session, and we're a little bit late, but it's all good. It's better to make the change and sacrifice 5-10 minutes in this session, and hopefully we're better prepared for quali then. So all good.
I didn't talk to you after at Donington Park. I mean, it's a change of team this year, change of car. Does it all look pretty good for you?
Yeah, it was good. Donington was really positive. You know, really, we should have been up having top 10 finishers. I've just had a bit of bad luck getting crazy weather conditions, but overall it was really positive. So if we can get well up in that top 10 this weekend and have a strong showing, then it's not a bad start to the season, I think.
Good news, Dan. Thank you for having a chat to me. There we go. The Huddersfield resident, Dan Lloyd, just stepping out the first 10 minutes of this session for the sake of making sure the car and the setup changes is all working as it should.
Makes sense, because it's a lot wetter, isn't it, for this one than it was for the earlier free practice session. It's the first time, really, that we've seen in any of the sessions plumes of spray coming from the back of the cars. There's proper surface water now, and a few twitchy moments. Rory Butcher had a bit of a twitch going through Paddock Hill Bend on the previous lap. It is busy out there because they're all thinking, yeah, it's wet, but it might be wet for qualifying. We need to get our heads around the setup for this session, so busy on track. Butcher has set the fastest lap of the time, fastest lap of the session, though, with a 53.978. Bobby Thompson, 17 thousandths of a second behind him, is second with a 53.995. Ronan Pearson, impressive, third quickest for the rookie, 54.235 second lap for Ronan. In the number 14 Bristol Street Motors with Accelerate car driver that's stepped up from the Mini Challenge, in which he finished fourth in the championship last year. Jake Hilly's fourth, fastest in free practice 1, fourth at the moment on a 54.2, which is about a quarter of a second away from Rory Butcher's best time. Tom Ingram has just improved to 5th place in the number 1 Hyundai, and he's only 14 thousandths of a second behind Hill, who in turn is only 14 thousandths of a second behind Pearson. Ricky Collard is 6th, George Gamble 7th, Stephen Jelly 8th, Ash Sutton 9th, and Dan Rowbottom, you heard from before the session started, is currently in 10th place. Everybody has got out there except for Nick Hamilton, I think I'm right in saying. 26 cars. No, Nick's out there. Nick has got out there. So just Dan Lloyd then, isn't it? And we know he's going out a bit late after he spoke to Alan a few minutes ago. So Nick has got his first proper laps of the session in. Got his first ever BTCC championship points here, Nick Hamilton, at Brands Hatch. So it's a circuit that he enjoys, goes well out, be full of confidence after that wet weather performance in race 2, only at Donington Park, and his best ever result in the British Touring Car Championship. First ever disabled driver to compete in the BTCC, and a real inspiration. The cerebral palsy that he suffers just to be on the grid is a win in itself. But terrific performance for him 2 weeks ago at Donington Park, with Ricky Collard now going third quickest at 54.057. Toyotas like the wet. First and third at the moment.
Do you know what I want? I want a great weekend in touring cars for Ricky Collard.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't had it yet. He's shown
teasing.
speed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's shown speed. He's shown he can do it. But we haven't had, a super weekend. And I think it's coming. He came out of the blocks at Donington Park and was showing the raw speed that we know he can do. Bear in mind the sort of people that Ricky has competed against in karting and in single-seaters as well. He's top line, is Rick. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And he deserves a turnaround weekend. Once he has that, I reckon there'll be no stopping him.
I agree. Absolutely knocking on the door. He had a pretty good weekend at Donington. 6th place in race 1. Got points in race 3, the reverse grid race as well. And he made his debut in 2018, taking over from Dad Rob Collard for the second half of the season. But his first full season was only last year, really, in the Toyota. Got close to a podium, a 4th place finish at Snetterton Very different conditions that we got here today, and already got 45 races under his belt. But Ricky, third quickest at the moment. Butcher, Thompson and Collard, the top three as it stands. 79 thousandths of a second between them, even in these conditions. It's impressively close. Sutton is fourth, Pearson is fifth, but in the pits. Hill is sixth, Ingram seventh. Tom Chilton didn't get a proper lap in the first session with the problems that he had with his car, but he's eighth quickest, straight up there for Tom. So ninth place for George Gamble, 10th place for Stephen Jelly, Rowbottom's 11th, Cookie's 12th. They're both in the pits. Camish has just improved with his first proper lap of the session to 13th place. Turkington 14th, Morgan 15th, Moffat 16th, Patterson 17th, Watson 18th, Butel 19th, Halstead 20th, Edwards 21st, Osborne 22nd, Doble 23rd, Taylor Smith 24th, Hamilton 25th, Powell 26th, and Dan Lloyd yet to appear on track, but he should be coming fairly soon. 25 minutes, 25 seconds left on the clock, and a few improvements out there in the top 10 last time around. One for Hill, one for Chilton, but otherwise sort of plateaued a little bit again now. It's not just about getting quick lap times, though. It's not just about qualifying. Yes, you want the car to be up the sharp end this afternoon, but that's no use doing that if the car isn't able to compete for a long race distance. So they're going to be looking at that as well. As Alan mentioned, we've got the option tyres returning pretty much full time this season after being teased back in. It's the first time since 2019 that most of the race tracks at least will have an option tyre if we get to slick tyre running tomorrow. I have a choice of medium and soft tyre for the Goodyear slicks, with the soft being the option that you have to use in at least one of the races. So the cars just getting to grips, pardon the pun, with the circuit at the moment, trying to find the lines which will change, although that rain has stayed pretty consistent. It's not heavy rain, but it stayed pretty consistent all the way through the last hour or so, really. So first proper chance to get used to this. A track limits warning for Ash Sutton. Found the limits. Colin Turkington's improved up to 7th place in the BMW with exactly the same time as Jake Hill, his teammate, or stablemate, with a 54.241. How about that? Exactly the same lap time for those two. There are a lot of them in the 54.2. Sutton, Pearson, Hill, Turkington and Ingram all in the same 10th of a second as each other, or half a 10th of a second of each other. Mikey Doble on his second weekend as a British touring car driver, improving up to 21st place. He's aboard the number 88 car store Powermax Racing Astra. 3 Astras in the championship this year. Mikey Doble Challenge, Ginetta GT5 Challenge champion last year, so had a flavour when the GT5 Challenge raced for a few occasions on the Toka weekends, a flavour of what this whole experience is like. But I spoke to him at the end of Donington Park, congratulated him on his independence win in race 2, and asked him how it all was there. How was your first weekend as a British touring car racer? He got fans chatting to him, and he sort of looked slightly bewildered. He's like, I don't really know what's gone on there.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't get the start. Who is this?
This is Mikey Doble.
Was it?
So he said, I don't really know what's gone on there. He said, normally it's me on the other side. You know, it's me going down the autograph session, trying to get the autographs of the drivers, and suddenly this weekend they'll want my autograph.
How cool.
So I don't quite know what's hit me. He looked a bit sort of flabbergasted by it all.
That's superb.
Yeah, really a nice guy down to earth. He's the guy that could have been a pro golfer. He was a pro golfer actually for a while. He got his handicap to +1. Raced karts when he was younger, and then spent 5 years away from racing to pursue a golf career. He was a winner at county level, at college level as well, and still a very, very good golfer, but he could have gone either way with his career.
So he goes from the sport that costs, well, a bag of clubs and a few balls to, a bit more.
It's not as expensive as racing, though, you're right.
Yeah. Oh, are you suggesting? I suppose there's club membership and all those.
No, it's not
kind
too
of
bad.
things.
But
No.
Well, not for juniors.
No.
But the clubs, the kit's quite expensive.
Oh, is it?
The kit's
Right.
quite. If you want the proper kit, yeah.
Yeah.
And the balls are really expensive.
Are they?
Yeah, especially when you keep losing them. Yeah.
I'm really bored now.
50 quid cost me yesterday. My son's a golfer. 50 quid for 12 balls.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Goodness me.
Got to have the proper
Well, it's
ones,
not.
you see.
It's still not a touring car drive, though, is it?
No. Oh, no. I've encouraged him down the golf over karting route, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to remortgage. it's quite common though, isn't it, Al, where you get people who are really good at sport are actually really good at 2 or 3 sports. It's quite a common thing, though.
It's so very true, because they have the mindset, the dedication to press on and get really good at what they do. I also was a golfer when I was younger, when I was a junior, and thoroughly enjoyed it, and played quite often. Then when it becomes a bit more expensive, I A, did not have the time and dedication, B, the money to continue with it. It all goes up a bit in cost when you become a senior, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, because the level of concentration you need in golf is crazy high, really. I mean, you play, depends how many you're playing, but 3 hours, 3.5 hours a game if there's 3 or 4 of you playing. And you've got to concentrate on every single angle of your body and your shot and your swing and where you hit the ball and everything for that amount of time. It's millimetre precise.
And it's not just...
And then you bring that into racing, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is the mindset, I think, that transfers from sport to sport. But I didn't know Mikey Doble was quite that good at golf. That's really impressive.
Yeah, plus 1, which is always a bit weird thing, I think, in golf. So +1 means his handicap was 1 under. I don't know why they don't call it 1 under, but he was a below par golfer, so pro level, proper pro level golfer, and not a bad racing driver, it turns out, either. Nor is this Ash Sutton fella. I think he's quite good in the wet as well, isn't he? That's Ash Sutton. Remember a few races where he's absolutely thrilled in the wet. Well, he loves the wet conditions. He's just gone 2nd quickest in the Ford.
They named him Nemo, didn't they?
Yeah, you see why. I shall never forget that first race win at Croft. If you think this weather's bad, and you think Donington Park was bad that day at Crofts.
I don't remember it, because I try and erase these memories from my mind. Otherwise, I'd never come back and walk up and down the pit lane.
He couldn't have got wet. Like, it was impossible to be any wetter.
Yeah.
And he got his first win in the old MG.
Yeah.
And when he got his first podium that day, and then he went and got a win later in the day. And then he thought, this guy, he's pretty good in the wet, and has proven that time and time again over the last 7 seasons now, as it is for him.
I'll tell you who's impressing so far today, and that's Bobby Thompson. Local driver, one of the most chilled out guys you could ever hope to meet, and a superbly quick racing driver. Bobby Thompson, the Jack Sears champion from last year, but he was right up there this morning in FP1. He's right up there again in FP2.
Yeah, first podium for him came here last year at the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, and he's been quick everywhere, hasn't he, over the last couple of years. But you're right, it looks at home in that car and that team this season. He looked on it at Donington Park, that's for sure. 14th in the championship last year, got that podium. But he also got 21 points finishes, which is no mean feat in such a competitive field, with, of course, all the the hybrid that comes in and the reverse grids and so forth, and comfortably won the Jack Sears Trophy with 12 category wins and 26 podiums in the Jack Sears Trophy. 3rd in the Independence Trophy as well, which shouldn't be overlooked for Bobby Thompson last year. So looking for his 2nd podium this weekend, and
we
why
probably
not?
haven't spoken enough about Ronan Pearson, because Ronan is new to the championship this year, having come from mini racing and a race winner in mini challenge. But he had a podium essentially at Donington Park. He didn't keep the podium, but he had the moment of standing on the podium. It was for no fault of his own that the car failed its ride height check at the end of the race, so therefore that podium position was taken away from him, and Sam Osborne inherited it. But for a young driver in his first weekend in touring car racing to be on the podium is a bit of a dream, that.
Yeah, absolutely mega, and he was impressive on Saturday as well, wasn't he? In the free practice sessions,
he had a brilliant Saturday.
Sessions. Yeah, really good. And so just making his way through Graham Hill Bend at the moment, actually, as well. And I heard from a very reliable source that I know that once he found out there was potentially a drive going this season with Bristol Street Motors Accelerate, he was straight on the phone to the team and to Justine Williams, said, right, what do I need to do to get in the car, because I'm going to get in the car. And he's bit like Nick Hamilton. He's a guy that really kind of works hard, looking after, organising all his own deals and sponsorship deals, and he's ultra committed. There with the Scottish Saltire emblazoned proudly upon the roof, he charges into Paddock Hill Bend.
He's a proud Scot. Had a brilliant weekend in Mini Challenge last year at Knock Hill, which was lovely to see, and he's got his family around him as well. And he's certainly one to watch, is Ronan.
Yeah, started out, actually the year that Ash Sutton came in the British Touring Car Championship 2016 was the year he started car racing. He's only 21, from Fife in Scotland, and he had a couple of seasons in the Junior Saloon Car Championship. Then had a season in the Michelin Clio Cup Series, which was not the main Renault UK Clio Cup, but the version with the slightly older cars. He was the champion of that in 2019, and then 3 seasons in the JCW Mini Challenge, 4th in the championship last year with Accelerate, so he knows the team, and got 3 wins, you say, Knock Hill, but also at Donington Park and at Silverstone. So really impressive drive to get himself up on the podium until the ride height check was failed again, through no real fault of his own there. So we'll see how he gets on, but he's going well at the moment in 8th place in the number 14 car, which is impressive. So Bletcher set the best time of the session fairly early on and has not been very active since then. He's only done 8 laps. Most of them have done 12, 13, 14 laps. He's only done 8 laps. He's only 0.005 of a second quicker than Ash Sutton, who's got the best first sector time last time around, but overall didn't quite match his best lap. But a 53.983 means that Ash Sutton from a few laps ago has got the gap down to 0.005 of a second. Bobby Thompson is third, 17,000ths of a second between the top 3. Hill in 4th and Collard in 5th are both within a 10th as well, so 79,000ths between the top 5 in this session. Sector 2 green, which means there must have been a moment not long ago which I missed, but that's been cleared now on the second half of the lap. Who else have we got there? Colin Turkington has sort of cracked up. He's gone in the pits now, but he's up to 6th place. Tom Chilton 7th. Ronan Pearson, as mentioned, in 8th. Best of the Jack Sears runners. Tom Ingram 9th, and Dan Camish currently in 10th place. We have now had a Dan Lloyd on track as well, haven't we? He's gone back in the pits, but he did set a couple of laps and he's up into 20th place. So everybody has been out there and set at least a few lap times. Nick Hamilton's only done 7 laps. Dan Lloyd only 9, Rory Butcher only 9. Everybody else, though, has been pretty busy. Especially busy have been George Gamble, Stephen Jelly and Nick Halstead, who are all pushing up towards 20 laps now. Looks a little bit brighter overhead, but it's just keeps coming, the rain, doesn't it? So we've got 13.5 minutes left to go in the session, and a few more cars starting to trickle down the pit lane now, ready to come back out. One of them is indeed going to be Will Powell, and be followed by teammate for the season, one of Aidan Moffat, in this smart new livery on the One Motorsport cars, these Honda Civics. They've got some input as well from Team Dynamics, who are not on the grid for the first time in nearly 20 years. Team Dynamics, the late withdrawal of their main sponsor Halfords, but I'm sure they will be back in the BTCC, but they're lending some technical support and have given some cars as well, some of the Dynamics cars over to One Motorsport, keeping the Honda name flying here. And as I mentioned at Donington Park, with Jason Plato having retired at the end of last year, and Matt Neal, although he's never officially retired, not having raced in the championship for a few years, this is the first time since 1991 that we haven't had either a Matt Neal or Jason Plato, or both of them, racing in the British Touring Car Championship. So it feels like a real sort of change of era, doesn't it? Changing of the guard. Some really talented young drivers coming through the field, but some really experienced ones as well. And another season where you look at the list and you think, that driver might win it, that driver could win it, that driver could definitely win it, and you end up with a list of maybe a dozen, maybe more, that you think, yeah, actually it's going to be wide open again this season, which is part of the beauty of the Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship. So, more cars heading out on track now. It's been a little bit quieter over the last 5 or 10 minutes. Now starting to get quite busy as they start to ramp up towards qualifying and try to find the sweet spot with a setup if they can. So remember, the top 7 in the championship will, going into qualifying, have less use of their hybrid power. This 48-volt battery, which when deployed gives another 40 brake horsepower. You know they've deployed it because the blue light flashes. There's less use for everybody this year, even out of the front runners you can only use it for half of the race. But in qualifying, it's how long you can use it for on the lap. So if you're in the top 7 in the championship, you can use less hybrid in your qualifying laps than everybody else. So for everybody 8th and below in the championship, you can use it for 15 seconds per lap. But if you are Dan Camish, the championship leader, you can only use hybrid for 1 second per lap in qualifying. Tom Ingram, 2nd in the championship, can only use it for 3 seconds. Jake Hill, 3rd in the championship, 5 seconds. Tom Chilton, 4th in the championship, 7 seconds. Adam Morgan, 5th in the championship, gets it for 9 seconds per lap. And then Colin Turkington in 6th, 11 seconds. Dan Rowbottom in 7th, 13 seconds. Everybody else, 15 seconds. Now, that's quite a considerable amount. About a short lap like the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, if you can use it for 15 seconds per lap, you can use it for a third of the lap, essentially, if you're not in the top 7. But if you're Dan Camish, only 1 second, hardly anything that you can use on your qualifying lap. So it is a much revised system this year. And then we'll talk about the races when we get there tomorrow, but there are far fewer laps that you can use it for. Again, if you are in the top 7 in the championship, going into that first race of the weekend, then it switches across to the top 7 from race 1, have less use in race 2, and the same going from race 2 to race 3. There's also a change in the minimum speed at which you can deploy it. So not only do you get less use of it if you're in the top 7, you can't deploy it until you get to a much higher minimum speed if you're in the top 7 in the championship. So everybody outside of the top 7 have to get to 115 kilometres an hour, which is about 75 miles an hour, before they can deploy hybrid. But if you're Dan Camish or Tom Ingram or Jake Hill, if you're in the top 3, you've got to do another 20 kilometres an hour before you can deploy it. So you have to wait longer. You have to get to 135k. 4th and 5th have to get to 130, and 6th and 7th have to get to 125. So less use of it in the qualifying, less use of it in terms of laps in the race, and you have to wait longer before you can press the button and give yourself that extra boost. And it's therefore going to be a lot more strategy involved, especially as, you know, everybody outside of the restricted drivers last year could use it whenever they wanted, apart from the first lap of the race and the first lap after the safety car last year. But now it's kind of half the laps of the race. That's it. That's all you get. So you have to try and save it up for when you need it most. And a few drivers came unstuck with that. They know how much they've got left with a display on their steering wheel, and we get the information up on the TSL timing screen. So all part of the strategies that are going to come into play over the course of the season. Dan Lloyd going over the line, then has gone back out and building up his speed now. This is going to be his first flying lap since going back out onto the track. Andrew Watson rejoining, Mikey Doble rejoining as well. The two Vauxhalls going through Paddock Hill Bend at the moment. Butcher still in the pits and still with this tiny advantage of 5 thousandths of a second in free practice 2 over Ash Sutton. Bobby Thompson still there just behind in 3rd. 4th, Hill, they're all on track. Butcher's still in the pits, but Sutton, Thompson and Hill are on track. Collard is 5th, he's in the pits. Turkington is 6th, he's on track. And then everybody else in the top 10, apart from Tom Chilton, are on track as well. But starting to get a bit busier on the circuit and a bit less busy in the pit lane, as you'd expect, really, with less than 8 minutes left on the clock now. So Bobby Thompson pushing on. Nobody really setting the world alight on the timing screen. We had a personal best first half of the lap for Adam Morgan last time he completed a lap, but then he slowed up on the second half of the lap and didn't really get a quick time in. But now we've got outlaps for Watson, Moffat, Patterson has gone back out, and Nick Halstead has just rejoined the circuit as well as Colin Turkington in the BMW charges then into the right-hander at Paddock Hill Bend. The 4-time champion looking, if he can, to go past the record and get 5 titles. Andy Rouse winning 4 championship titles as well back in the 70s and 80s with 4 different manufacturers as well. Colin Turkington looking for that 5th title, still very much involved in the championship fight last year for most of the season. Just had a bit too much to do coming into the final weekend of the year, and then it wasn't a great finale for him here at Brands Hatch in October. Over the line comes Dan Lloyd. That's his first lap since going back out at speed, and it's a personal best, 54.806, but he stays in 20th position. But it's so tight, 9/10 of a second between the top 21 drivers. Not unusual at Brands Hatch, but definitely unusual in the wet conditions. As I say, normally a bit more spread out in the wet than it is in the dry. Turkington goes through. That's a 54.4, which is only 0.3 of a second away from his best lap. Sutton did a 54.3 on his last lap. which is about half a second away from his best. So the times are okay at the moment. They're sort of low to mid 54s for the quick drivers currently. But we have had 3 drivers, Butcher, Sutton and Thompson, that have got into the high 53s early in the session. So the track maybe not quite at its best, or maybe they're not yet going for the one-lap flyer. Butcher's gone back out on track. So he's on an outlap, and Collard as well. So there's a couple of front runners in this session back on track. We've got Rowbottom and Osborne in the pits, I can see. Tom Chilton about to come back out. He's just been pushed back out of the pit lane apron and will be headed on track soon. His second season in the Hyundai, saying that the car has been worked on a lot over the winter and made a lot of changes, and changes that kind of suit his driving style a little bit more. Pushed quite hard. He's done quite a lot of testing over the winter, and he's in a good place. Despite a damper problem, still qualified in the middle of the pack in the session at Donington Park a couple of weeks ago. And terrific drive, including, I think he overtook 7 cars on 1 lap on his way to victory in that second race, the dry to wet race at Donington. Osborne going back out. Sutton's in the pits though, and no green sector times anywhere in the top 20 really at the moment, so nobody's yet on a charge. Lap times kind of in the 55s now for most of them. The quickest driver on track at the moment is still in fact in the pits. The ones that were in the 54s, the Camish and Sutton, have gone in the pits, so actually the track seems slower. 55s for everybody that's out there, or 56s rather than 53s and 54s. Josh Cook about to re-emerge. Rory Butcher, who's quickest at the moment, goes over the line. That was a good lap, 54.421 in the Toyota. It's not his best, but that lap in itself would have been good enough to be in the top 10, top 8 indeed. 53.9's his best, but he's half a second away, but he's the quickest driver on track at the moment. Sutton going back out, rejoining, coming out of the pit lane at Paddock Hill Bend at the moment in the number 116 car. Ash Sutton, who is one of the champions that we got on the grid, of course, this year. Tom Ingram, Colin Turkington, the others. Colin with 4 titles, Ash 3, and Tom with his first title last year. We've got, how many have we got? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 drivers on the grid now have been race winners in the BTCC, with more than 200 race wins between them, 204 wins. Colin Turkington being the most winning driver on 63 wins of the current field. 27 for Ash Sutton, is the second most winning driver on the grid, and then Tom Ingram's 25 wins now. He's notched up last year's champion. Right, let's have a look at the times. Kind of getting the odd sector time that flashes green. Stephen Jelly with a good start to his lap here on the BMW. Number 12 car comes through now. He's deployed hybrid as he crosses the line, and he does his best lap of the session at 54.381 for the Leicestershire-based driver, number 12, and keeps him in 12th place, but he's only 66 thousandths of a second away from being in 11th, and he's only about half a tenth of a second away from being in the top 6. It's that tight, so good lap that from Stephen. Best lap he's done, not quite enough to move him up the order. Personal best from Dexter Patterson, who's just got himself ahead of Watson and into 18th place in the number 17 machine. So the Scot in the Rebeverages Bartercard Team Hard Run Cupra Leon improving. Jade Edwards goes over the line, deploying hybrid. Not a best lap, that one, a 56.7. Dan Lloyd still circulating, he's not far behind either on track. He's just going into Paddock Hill Bend. Got Dan Camish about to come back out on track, so the championship leader making his way down the pit lane exit now and rejoining most of them on track. Hill's in, Chilton's in, I think Pearson's just gone back out as well, so there's only, I think, 3, no, Pearson coming in, sorry, so 4 cars in the pit lane, 23 cars on track, I make it. And 2 minutes to go now in the session. Last chance to get things right before qualifying this afternoon. But will the track be anything like this in terms of how wet it is when we get to that session in, less than 3 hours' time? Rory Butcher looked like he was about to push at the start of this lap, heading up towards Druids now. The driver that got the fastest time of the session early on. The Toyota makes his way downhill into Graham Hill Bend now. The trickiest corner on the lap, not the fastest corner, but the trickiest. Steep downhill, all the weight's on the front of the car. Back end can go light. You can understeer very easily. It's a very narrow exit there, and easy to go on the curbs and on the grass and get done for track limits there. But you've got to get a good exit because the uphill run is fairly steep from that corner up the Cooper Straight up towards the left-hander at Surtees. Bit wide there through McLean's for Rory Butcher. Got right to the edge of the circuit, so struggling for grip there. And yeah, Butcher slow through the first sector. Maybe now he pulls the trigger, but that didn't end up, he backed off in the end. Didn't end up being a particularly quick lap, but look, he was going for it again at the start of this one. Rowbottom over the line. It is Butcher quickest, Sutton second, Thompson third, Hill fourth, Collard fifth, Turkington sixth, Chilton seventh, Pearson eighth, Ingram ninth, Camish 10th, Gamble 11th, Rowbottom's 12th, Jelly's 13th, Cook is 14th, Morgan 15th, Moffat 16th, Butel 17th, Patterson 18th, then Watson and Lloyd 19th and 20th, with Doble 21st, Halstead 22nd, Taylor Smith 23rd, Osborne 24th, Edwards 25th, Hamilton 26th, and Powell 27th as it stands. Just going back out, Tom Chilton and Ronan Pearson as well, I think. Remember, they get some practice starts at the end of this one as well. So if you're along the start-finish straight, photo opportunity coming up in a few minutes' time. And the checkered flag now comes out. So the session ends. Rory Butcher ambles across the line. So not flying at the end of that session, but flying at the start of it to set the quickest lap of free practice 2 in those wet conditions. 53.978, good 4 seconds or so. That's slower than we had in free practice 1. More cars crossed the line, nobody improving, and the top 4 have all taken the checkered flag now in this session. And a lot more spray coming off the back of the cars than there was in that first free practice session a couple of hours ago. Still raining, still not super heavy, but wet enough. Umbrellas up in the grandstands. But at least for the drivers, and at least for the teams trying to set up the cars, you could say it is now consistent. Whereas it was dry, greasy, wet, damp earlier, a bit of everything. Now it's just wet. So they know what they can do if it stays like this. So practice starts coming up, and the first one onto the line is Jack Butel, the Channel Islander in the number 96 Cupra. Blue and black in colours, takes his car to the line. Windscreen wipers on, revs it up, pops and bangs a bit, and joining him shortly Rory Butcher off the line, front wheel spin. It's a little bit uphill as well off the line, and it's cambered from, as you look at Paddock Hill Bend, left to right, the start finish line here. So it's a tricky, probably one of the trickiest tracks to get the cars off the line here. Andrew Watson away, and Rory Butcher goes next. The Vauxhall goes first, and the Toyota. Adam Morgan off the line. Rear wheel drive BMWs, we know, are good off the line. A really good start that from Jake Hill. We can get one of those tomorrow, I'll be well pleased. And then we got 3-time champion Ash Sutton lining up next in the Upper Racing UK yellow and blue Ford Focus ST. Surrounded by Team Hard Run Coopers at the moment. Dan Lloyd to his right. Bobby Thompson diagonally just behind him, and Jade Edwards in the orange and black car right behind him. So off the line for Sutton. That was nice, not too much wheel spin. You can tell they're wet tyres because of the blue sidewall. Lloyd away, then Edwards. Still waiting for Bobby Thompson. Should be next one off the line. And that looked decent as well from Bobby. Osborne gets going next. We've got a couple of the Hondas coming up next. Aidan Moffat away. And next one off the line with a pretty tidy looking start. Stephen Jelly, the rear wheel drive BMW. So more cars making their practice starts. Let's run through the times then. Fastest in that session, number 6, Rory Butcher, 53.978 seconds. 5 thousandths of a second quicker than number 116, Ash Sutton, did a 53.983. And 12 thousandths of a second behind him. 17 thousandths of a second off the top time was Bobby Thompson, third place, continuing his strong start to the day. in the Cupra. Fourth, number 24, Jake Hill. Fifth, number 37, Ricky Carlard. Sixth, number 4, Colin Turkington. Seventh, number 3, Tom Chilton. Eighth, number 14, Ronan Pearson. Impressive from him again. Ninth, number 1, Tom Ingram. And 10th, number 27, Dan Camish. Then 11th was 42, George Gamble. 12th, number 32, Dan Rowbottom. 13th, number 12, Stephen Jelly. 14th, number 66, Josh Cook. 15th, number 33, Adam Morgan. 16th was number 16, Aidan Moffat. 17th, number 96, Jack Butel. 18th, number 17, Dexter Patterson. 19th, number 11, Andrew Watson. 20th, number 123, Dan Lloyd. 21st, number 88, Mikey Doble. 22nd, number 22, Nick Halstead. 23rd, number 40, Aaron Taylor-Smith. 24th, number 77, Sam Osborne. 25th, number 99, Jade Edwards. 26th, number 28, Nick Hamilton. And 27th, number 70, Will Powell in his second season of the Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship, the former Brit Car class champion.
Well, what a session that was. Butcher topping free practice 2, showing everybody exactly what he's got to offer as well. It was a 53.978, 5 thousandths of a second faster than Ash Sutton second, Thompson in third. And look at it, the top 5 separated by 79 thousandths of a second here at Brands Hatch Indy. We are going to be in for an insane qualifying. You can join us live here on JB Motorsports for all the watch-along action. That will be with our own commentary as well at 3:15. Next up, in 45 minutes' time, you can join myself, Josh Birch, with Edward Hunter in the commentary box for all the action from the Monaco E-Prix. Practice done then. Qualifying will now take over. We'll see you later on back here at Brands Hatch. Bye-bye.